Hello and welcome to Story Time at Park River Bible Camp. My name is Emily and I will be reading Polar Beards Past Bedtime by Mary Pope Osborne and illustrated by Sal Murdoch. Chapter 1. Are you serious? Woo! The strange sound came from outside the open window. Jack opened his eyes in the dark. The sound came again. Woo! Jack sat up and turned on his light. He put on his glasses, then he grabbed the flashlight from his table and shone it out the window. A white snowy owl was sitting on a tree branch. Woo! Said the owl again. Its large yellow eyes looked right into Jack's. What does he want? Jack wondered. Is he a sign like the rabbit and the gazelle? A long-legged rabbit and a gazelle had led Jack and Annie to the magic tree house for their past two adventures. Woo! Wait a second, Jack said to the owl. I'll get Annie. Jack's sister, Annie, always seemed to know what birds and animals were saying. Jack jumped out of bed and hurried to Annie's room. She was sound asleep. Jack shook her and she stirred. What? She said. Come to my room, he whispered Jack. I think Morgan sent another sign. In a split second, Annie was out of bed. She hurried with Jack to his room. Jack led her to the window. The snowy owl was still there. Woo, said the owl. Then he raised his white wings and took off into the night. He wants us to go to the woods, said Annie. That's what I thought, said Jack. Meet you downstairs after we get dressed. No, he says go now, right now, said Annie. We'll have to wear our pajamas. I have to put on sneakers, said Jack. Okay, I'll put mine on too. Meet you downstairs, said Annie. Jack pulled on his sneakers. He threw his notebook into his backpack, then he grabbed his flashlight and tiptoed downstairs. Annie was waiting at the front door. They silently slipped outside together. The night air was warm. Moths danced around the porch light. I feel weird, said Jack. I'm going back to put on some real clothes. You can't, said Annie. The owl said right now. She jumped off the porch and headed across their dark yard. Jack groaned. How did Annie know exactly what the owl said, he wondered. Still, he didn't want to be left behind, so he took off after her. The moon lit their way as they ran down their street. When they entered the Frog Creek woods, Jack turned on his flashlight. The beam of light showed shadows and swaying branches. Jack and Annie stepped between the trees. They stayed close together. Woo! Jack jumped in fear. It's just the white owl, said Annie. He's somewhere nearby. The woods are creepy, said Jack. Yeah, said Annie. In the dark, it doesn't even feel like our woods. Suddenly, the owl flapped near them. Yikes, said Annie. Jack shone his flashlight on the white bird as it rose into the sky. The owl landed on a tree branch, right next to the magic tree house. And there was Morgan Le Fay, the enchantress librarian. Her long white hair gleamed in the beam of Jack's flashlight. Hello, Morgan called softly in a soothing voice. Climb up. Jack used his flashlight to find the rope ladder. Then he and Annie climbed up into the treehouse. Morgan was holding 3 scrolls. Each one held the answer to an ancient riddle that Jack and Annie had already solved. You have journeyed to the ocean, the Wild West, and Africa to find answers to these 3 riddles, said Morgan. Ready for another journey? Yes, said Jack and Annie together. Morgan pulled a 4th scroll from the folds of her robe. She handed it to Annie. After we solve this riddle, will we become master librarians, asked Annie. And help you gather books through time and space, said Jack. Almost, said Morgan. Before Jack could ask what she meant, Morgan pulled out a book and gave it to him. For your research, she said. Jack and Annie looked at the book's title, Adventure in the Arctic. Oh, wow, the Arctic, said Annie. The Arctic, said Jack. He turned to Morgan. Are you serious? Indeed I am, she said, and you must hurry. I wish we could go there, said Annie, pointing at the cover. Wait a minute, we'll freeze to death, said Jack. Fear not, said Morgan. I am sending someone to meet you. The wind started to blow. Meet us? Who? Said Jack. Who? Said the snowy owl. Before Morgan could answer, The tree house started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Chapter 2. The Howling. The air was crisp and cold. Jack and Annie shivered. They looked out at the window at the dark gray sky. The treehouse was on the ground. There were no trees and no houses, only an endless field of ice and snow. Morgan and the owl were gone. "Read the riddle," said Annie, her teeth chattering. Jack unrolled the scroll. He read, "I cover what's real and hide what's true, but sometimes I bring out the courage in you. What am I?" "I'd better write it down," said Jack, shivering. He pulled out his notebook and copied the riddle. Then he opened the book. He found a picture of a barren white field. He read aloud. "The Arctic tundra is a treeless plain. During the dark winter, it is covered with snow and ice. In early spring, snow falls, but the sky begins to get lighter. During the summer season, the snow and ice melt and the sun shines 24 hours a day." "It must be early spring now," said Jack. "There's snow, but the sky's a little light." He turned the page. There was a picture of a man wearing a hooded coat with a fur trim. "Look at this guy," said Jack. He showed Annie the picture. "We need his coat," said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack. "Listen to this." He read aloud. This seal hunter wears sealskin clothing to protect him from icy winds. Before modern times, native people of the Arctic lived by hunting seals, caribou, polar bears, and whales." Jack took out his notebook. He wrote, "The Arctic. Seal hunters wear seal skin." He was too cold to write anymore. He clutched his pack against his chest and blew on his fingers. He wished he were back home in bed. "Morgan said someone was coming to meet us," said Annie. "If they don't come soon, we'll freeze to death," said Jack. "It's getting darker and colder." "Shh, listen," said Annie. A howling sound came from the distance. Then more howling sounds. And more. "What's that?" said Jack. They looked out the window. Snow was falling now. It was hard to see. The howling grew louder. It was mixed with yipping and yelping noises. Jack and Annie saw dark shapes coming through the snow. They seemed to be running toward the treehouse. "Wolves?" said Annie. "Great. That's all we need," said Jack. "We're freezing and now a pack of wolves is coming for us." Jack pulled Annie into the corner of the treehouse. They huddled close together. The howling grew louder and louder. It sounded as if the wolves were circling the treehouse. They whined and yelped. Jack couldn't stand it any longer. He grabbed the Arctic book. "Maybe this can help us," he said. He searched for a picture of the wolves. "Oh, hi," Annie said. Jack looked up. He caught his breath. A man was looking through the treehouse window. His face was surrounded by fur. It was the seal hunter from the Arctic book. Chapter 3. Mush. "Did you come with the wolves?" asked Annie. The seal hunter looked puzzled. "Did Morgan send you to us?" said Jack. "I had a dream," the man said. "You were in it. You needed help." Annie smiled. "Morgan sends dreams sometimes," she said. "We came in Morgan's treehouse. It flies through time." "Oh, brother," thought Jack. "Who will believe that?" The seal hunter smiled, as if he was not surprised at all. "We do need help," said Jack. "We're freezing." The seal hunter nodded. Then he left the window. He returned a moment later with 2 small parkas like his own. They were made of heavy dark skins with fur-trimmed hoods. He passed one to Jack and one to Annie. "Thanks," said Jack and Annie. They put the parkas on. "Hooray," said Annie. "It's warm." "Yeah," said Jack. "They're made of seal skin." "Poor seals," said Annie. "Don't think about it," said Jack. He pulled his hood up. His head and upper body were very snug now. Only his legs, hands, and feet were still freezing. "Oh, thanks," said Annie. Jack looked up. The seal hunter was giving Annie a pair of fur pants. Then he handed a pair to Jack. "Thanks," said Jack. He quickly pulled the pants over his pajamas. Next, the seal hunter gave each of them a pair of fur boots and mittens. Jack took off his sneakers and pulled on the boots. He wiggled his frozen fingers into the warm mittens. I have a quick question, Jack said to the seal hunter. Do you know the answer to this riddle? He opened his notebook and read, I cover what's real and hide what's true, but sometimes I bring out the courage in you. What am I? The seal hunter shook his head. Come, he said to Jack and Annie. Then he disappeared from the window. What about those wolves out there? Jack called. But the seal hunter